Hey guys, Long Haul Larry, and we are still working on this Kenworth T680, and I have dropped off the flywheel to get remachined, and I crawled underneath here and took a peek at this thing, at this input shaft, and the input shaft actually looks pretty good. The actual splines itself look pretty good, but down here where this pilot bearing is, just what I was afraid of, you probably hear it. You can hear when I run my finger across it. It's probably got, I'd say at least like a 1/16 of an inch lip worn down all the way around. It's been just spinning in that frozen up pilot bearing and just shaving this down. And you figure if it's 1/16 here and 16, that's almost an 1/8 inch. So when the driver goes to shift, that's why there's broken springs and stuff, I believe. Is when the driver goes to shift, this is going up and down and it's throwing the pads around in there. So we got to pull it apart, and this is the clutch fork, and you can see how loose that is. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but if we're putting all new parts in, we might as well put a new one in. So we'll pull out the clutch fork, and this is an 18mm. Simple as that. 2 bolts and the clutch fork is out. Then this is your clutch brake. It's basically just a round disc, and it just has 2 pads on each side. And when the clutch is fully depressed, when the driver presses all the way down on the floor, you know, like you're coming up to a stop sign or something and you press down on the floor and you can't get it in the gear because it's from spinning. This is the clutch brake, and if you press as hard as you can, if you push it all the way to the floor, then you can get it in. That's because the throw rod bearing goes against here and it stops the throw rod bearing from spinning on there. It stops all this stuff. And so then it can actually shift. It has 2 little like tangs inside of it, and they fit into grooves here on the input shaft, and so it keeps it from, so it will lock it up. Actually, I got it around, and so it can't spin. So when it goes across it, then it grabs it and stops the shaft and all the gears from turning. So we'll get a new one of those with the clutch. And then to remove the input shaft, pretty simple, actually. It's surprising how this little thing, all the torque that goes through it is kind of just through this little shaft here. But there's 2, 4, there's 6 bolts you just remove. So, and one fell down in there. All right, now we need to get that out, and that can be kind of a booger once in a while. Oh, my hip was about locked up. And you can kind of, if the original, it could be kind of a pain in the butt. Hopefully we don't have to, there it goes. So you can kind of just wiggle it. Wiggle and jiggle, wiggle and jiggle. Get all that years of built up crud off there. All right, so this here comes off. Now, okay, so now what we're doing is we're wiggling the shaft and pulling on it. And what we're trying to do is get it as far out as we can. And you're going to get it to come out quite a ways. There's probably about, I don't know, 1/16 inch or so behind there. And then you need a snap ring pliers. So then you put a snap ring, there's a groove in here, there's a ring. It's a snap ring, but it doesn't have holes in it. And you basically stick your pliers in there and you just separate it. And I forgot my little screwdriver. Let's see if I can get this one off without. There we go. And then that little ring comes off. You just keep working around. Works better with this couple little screwdrivers. There she comes. Get my screwdriver back out. Just pry and pry. Work it around. Oop. Just like that. Let's get a little bit, there we go. So there's that little ring, comes off of there. All right, so then we have this tool here. And this tool, you don't need to have this tool, because you saw how I shook and I pulled. And I got the bearing to come out a little ways, and it's enough of it so you can actually use like one of these here pry bars. And if you get two of them, this one's, the tip is kind of boogered up on it, won't really work, but I have a smaller one too. But if you take them and put them over here on the side, you can kind of hook that bearing, and you put one on the other side, and you can kind of wiggle and wiggle and pull on them, and you can get that bearing out. I have this tool at home too, but what you do, you just slide it on there, and I know, actually, we have the right tool here. The main reason why is because the other mechanic was doing, I tore apart one, we needed input shaft, everything else I told him we need to order, and I had to go trucking, and the other mechanic, he tried to do all this, and he told him, I can't do this unless we have this tool. And I'm like, you can. And I tried to explain it to him, and nope, gotta have the tool. So boss order, I was gone for like a week, and I was gone for like a week, and I was coming through, and I said, hey, is that thing ready to go in? Should I stop, swing in and throw that transmission back in? No, we're still waiting. We're waiting for a tool. I'm like, seriously? You can do it? And I told you can't. Well, nope. So I actually stopped here and I popped it off for him. And then I think the next day this came in. That's the boss order. But it comes with these two little deals here. And basically it's a step up thing. It fits on the tool. And then there's like a groove in here. And this is where this big snap ring went over that input shaft. And so you just slide it up over top of it just like that. And then it's got another bigger ring that goes over the top of it. And that fits over the top of those two that you just set on there. Now this tool is hooked to that input. Now all you gotta do is just turn this and it will pull that bearing. Now I gotta position myself because I'm like old and my hip is about ready to dislocate. Yikers. Whew, that was painful. All right, a lot of them will have like mine at home actually has a weld and has a nut on here. This one has a square one. I mean, so let's grab an adjustable, and you just start to turn it, and then we'll just pull the bearing right out. it goes. You can see, and there's your bearing. Okay. So now we got one more clip, and it's gonna be really hard to see, and I'm gonna put the camera in there so that you guys can see it. What's my little screwdriver? Here it is. There's a little clip right here, and all you do is just put a screwdriver, and you gotta use 2 screwdrivers at once, and you just kind of put it in there, and you just start to work it around, and you'll have this one in here like that, and then you start using another screwdriver, and you pry behind it, and you kind of just make your way around, and that'll pop it out. So here we go. So just get a little one there, get it pried it, start to work that clip out, stick another one behind it, and you pop the clip out. I wish I had another little screwdriver, but I don't. And you're just gonna kind of slowly work your way around through the little teeth, and you get it out. There she goes. So there you go, and now the input shaft will just come right up. There you go. And this is what we need. So I gotta go get a new input shaft, and it's crazy how these little tiny teeth is what holds this back. It must be very hard in steel. But this is what holds all the torque of that motor, is just those little teeth on there. But I gotta run to the transmission place and get me a new input shaft and clutch fork, and hopefully the flywheel will be cut today and be able to start putting this back together if my body can do it, and assemble everything in the transmission back again. We have our brand new input shaft. It's very simple. That's installed. I know, isn't that crazy? Now we need to put our little snap rings all back into place. Towel here now. Wipe this off. And all you do is put it over top. And now, just as we did pulling it off, we're just gonna start it. This is the groove. And you just, I know you guys aren't gonna be able to see this, but you just work it around, pushing it into the groove. Done this before. Oh, I might be able to just use a snap ring pliers to, I might just hook in. There's 2 little tabs. I can keep it hooked. Let's see if it'll work. Oh, what? Well, that's so much easier. There, that's it. No, that's it. But look at that. Well, there, I just learned something different. Trial and error. I always just use 2 screwdrivers and pry around and do it about 20 times. And here I turned out just snap ring pliers, pops it on. Awesome sauce. Alrighty. This plate here, it has a little gasket that goes on here. Goes on this part, okay? And let's go just like that. It has a little gasket there, but there's no gasket on this metal surface on here. In here, there's no gasket. It's just metal. On this input shaft, right here on this part right here that sticks out past the bearing, there is it's almost like a thread cut into it, except it's a reverse thread. So as the oil comes out of the bearing and gets out here in the shaft, instead of continue to come out, it has those little lines in there, almost like threads that are cut going backwards. And so it takes the oil and puts the oil back towards the transmission. And then inside this cover here, you have to put this on so that there's a hole right here, and that has to be lined up with this hole right here, and the oil gets thrown back into here, and then it goes down in the hole and returns back into the transmission. It's actually pretty clever, and there's no seal inside here. It's just metal on metal. It's pretty cool. I thought it was interesting. Anyways, I get interested by stuff like that. Sorry, I got off on track. Okay, so now we got to put our bearing. I still have the bearing on the tool, and basically what we do is just take it and start to give it some gentle love taps. I really don't love transmissions, but you know, it's a figure of speech. I think I got her. Yep, we're good. Alright, so we can put our final clip on now. And this one's a booger. There she went. I'm gonna make sure that clip is fully seated in there. Ah, there you go. Looking good, man. And I gotta get some bolts. So you got to make sure that this gasket goes on there correctly. And this, see this hole, this drain port is right here. It's right over here. So it's going to be right here. Here's the threaded hole, threaded, and there's non-threaded. So that's got to line up with that one. And the gasket has an extra hole in one spot. So you want to line the gasket up. And then you can just start your bolts. So. Okay, which one? That's that one. Let's get them started. There we go. And then I'm going to put a little Loctite on these two. Just blue Loctite. There we go. So, the transmission is ready to go in. A clutch brake that you put on, like, if your clutch brake wears out, this clutch brake actually separates. And it'll come apart and stuff, but he couldn't, my boss couldn't find, like I said, he couldn't find the way in stock ahead, the one that comes on it, but just slides on like so. It'll work. And then gonna put some grease on here in the shaft to make it easier. All right, it's ready to go in.